Okay, let's get started. Hello, my name is Angelique Lentjes. On behalf of TU Delft Learning for Life, a very warm welcome to our webinar, Elevating Risk Management for Real-World Impact. In the next hour, you will be introduced to how risk management can deliver real business value. This webinar is aimed to be interactive. So please raise your questions in the Q&A, and our lecturers of the summer course Risk Management and speakers of today, Sicco, Santema and Rinske Geerlings, will be happy to answer them. We have also scheduled an extra Q&A session on March 19th, especially dedicated to answer more questions you may have or to answer unanswered questions of today. Well, we see still people coming in, but let's get started. Rinske and Sicco, welcome to you as well. Please introduce yourself and the topic of today.
Rinske, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for tuning in and greetings from the middle of the Pacific Ocean. I've got about 3 internet connections in parallel talking about business continuity and risk management and so on. So let's see how it goes. But I'm pretty confident that we're going through this. My name is Rinske. I used to study at the TU Delft a very long time ago, and Sicco was one of my mentors in that whole period and my professor when I was graduating. So we've been running summer courses and risk management kind of programs for the last 12 to 13 years. And this webinar is really to give you a bit of a snapshot of what we will cover in this summer course in late June and early July in Delft. So when I graduated from Delft University, I very quickly moved to Australia. So that's the hint on the Pacific Ocean there. I moved to Australia and I started fairly soon after also my own company. And I'm basically involved with risk management, with very creative kind of approaches to business continuity plans and also business impact analysis, a little bit about AI risk these days and also information security. So when I could bring that back to Delft as an intensive masterclass every year, I jumped on it straight away, and I've been super enjoying that every year when I come back. So that's a little bit of background on me. Sicco, would you like to go ahead?
Yeah, thanks, Rinske. You can read it on the screen. I'm a professor at Industrial Design Engineering, and the fun part for me being in industrial engineering is that we put people first. As it is a technological university, you could imagine that we design airplanes and ships and any technology. In our faculty, we aim to apply technology in lives of people or communities or businesses. And that's also the perspective on our risk summer course, is to see how it operates in organizations. What you also see is that the title of my chair is Network Design and Innovation. So I'm a network guy. So I used to work inside silos and inside organizations, where one organization was covering a lot of activities and a lot of things in the creation of value for customers. And these days you see that it is supply chain or ecosystem or networks collaborating. And we will be talking about that a lot today, how to deal with, let's say, the network risks in relation to my own risk management in my particular organization, or how we can deal with them. I live in the Netherlands, Utrecht, to say the center of the world. So that was a joke, by the way. Rinske, this is the agenda. So we were working on the introduction. We have a few slides and messages, but we, as Rinske already indicated, and Angelique as well, we would like to have the discussion with you. Please use the Q&A section to ask your questions, and we will react on it either while we are talking or the last 10, 15 minutes. Okay. I thought the first question was already there, but and we have a follow-up seminar in a fortnight, and that was an explicit question of last webinar where there was too little time to deal with all the questions, and then we got a lot of questions. Can you have an extra session where you particular go in depth in certain questions? So there it is, the 19th, the follow-up question seminar of this one, answering all the Q&A. Yeah, Rinske, what are we going to do today?
Well, we listened last year and we listened also throughout the year to some of the discussion on LinkedIn and some other recent developments that happened. We also listened to people when they came to a seminar we did in September, I think it was September, October last year. And we collated a number of topics where we thought, well, for a webinar, this will hopefully resonate with everyone. So first of all, a bit of an introduction. Sicco will do that one on perspectives on risk management. What is risk versus resilience? That kind of approach. Then we're going to talk fairly substantially on AI risk management. That is also a new topic that we are introducing this year in the summer course. Together with information security, we're going to blend in a lot of AI risk management. Then we're going to talk about the Allianz live data breach case. Sicco will cover that one. I will cover some key elements of organizational resilience and risk management alongside of some of the case studies, like, for example, the Spain-Portugal power outage. And then the next topic will be strengthening the G in ESG. Some of you have heard about ESG risk, environmental, social, and governance, and Sicco will dive into that topic a bit deeper. Working with ISO standards can be very overwhelming, so that's one topic I will cover after that. And risk management summer course, general information, some logistical information, any kind of things that we thought for now we can share. Also the speakers that we have already, the guest speakers that we have confirmed. So apart from Sicco and myself, we always have a number of guest presenters, and we have progressed already quite far with securing some of them. So that's our agenda for today, and Sicco will kick off first of all with the perspectives on risk management.
Yeah, thanks. And I see that the title is plural, so perspectives. So, but I start with one, and that's the let's say all kinds of things come together. What I would like to mention here is that the notion of a VUCA world, and I imagine that everybody knows VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complexity, and ambiguity. No, I can't pronounce that word, but for multiple interpretations, right? And how to react if it is really true that we live in a risk environment that is VUCA, means it changes all the time, and you never know what's going to happen. And what you see here on the screen is the typical, let's say, looking at the future through a cone. It is volatile, so everything can happen. It's not happening now, but somewhere in the future. And what we learned is that we try to predict what will happen once a risk materializes or happens, right? So there the first, I would say, mind boggle is already there, because if it is VUCA, why can we predict it? Right? So you can't really know what is happening, and the same holds for your mitigation measures. If I think something happens in the future and I mitigate that risk, why in a VUCA environment would I be certain that that particular risk happens, or the particular mitigation that I have will have its effect? So, well, I can read out what is in this particular idea, but in scenario thinking, and you mentioned Shell, Rinske, there it started. We predict futures, and then we work our way towards it. And what happens all the time is that if the cone is very wide, we still say, oh, now it's too complex, we can't deal with it. So we start using statistics or whatever tool to say, hey, no, but that's the projected future, right? So you see my hands. This is the cone, and once it gets too complex, somewhere in the future, in the VUCA world, we say, okay, now we project what will happen, and then all of a sudden we make the future kind of certain. So what we suggest in risk management, and if you can click on Rinske, I call this the multiple future. So the notion there is that if we can think on future positions, risks, and mitigation, and we have a scenario built on it, let's say the orange one, and it is a what shorter term projection to the future, I keep that in. And it is a possible future. And the same holds for the other cones. So it's not one prediction or projection of the future, but have a whole set of futures and projections, and I keep them all alive. And what you see in this particular picture is that they all kind of move to the right. So what already happens is that my view on risks for my organizations towards the future is happening somewhere on the right side. Oh, it's too big, my hand. So, and we keep them alive. So it means that in reacting to whatever happens, we have to be very agile, and we have to be able to move from one, let's say, mitigation direction all of a sudden to somewhere else. And it's a bit.
Sicco, you had an analogy when we chatted a few days ago about the car with three wheels. Well,
Yeah.
How does that fit in?
Well, the notion is what the question there is what happens if I lose a wheel? And the measure used to be that we had a spare tire or spare wheel in our car. But currently, cars are sold without spares. It is an extra. So you have. So think about the measure now that you don't have this wheel available when you have a flat tire. Can I drive on three wheels? What do I have to do? How do I balance the car? Is it stiff enough? Can I keep on going? Or any other measure there? Well, that might work, right? You see, I saw once a Formula One car, they are so stiff that they can easily drive on three wheels. Nothing happens, not at a very large speed, but still. And then the next question, obviously, is what happens if I get another flat tire, right? And there we go. Can I drive on two wheels? No,
We call that Murphy's Law.
Murphy's Law. You never have one flat tire at a time. But that's the idea here. So the what if and how do I react? Okay, yeah, one chat is now to differentiate from uncertainty and real risks. That's obvious. I'm trying to talk about risks here. So if I can't predict that something else, then risks that might happen, but I still will not be influenced by it. By the way, Wilhelm, in your example, one of the answers could be don't skip the wedding. Stay single. Then you don't have the problem of rain at your wedding. As possible future. But yeah, very right. So it is about risks here and mitigation measures. Well, that's what I would like to tell. Oh, place a tent. Yeah, why would you place a tent if the prediction is nice weather? So let's not go into that, but that's the good discussion there. It is a solution, so keep it in there instead of start discussing whether it will help or not, and have the tent available. That's my point. And the model at the left says I'm going to project, so that means that I have to make a choice whether it's going to rain or not, and whether I have the tent or not. But my cry out here is don't have that discussion and keep it all in. because somewhere in the future it will tell.
Yeah, and that's also where we talk a lot about being truly resilient. You don't really care, when something happens, what the reasons were, what the chances were, what all that calculation in that risk matrix was.
No.
You care about do you have a plan to deal with it, and do you have provisions that cater that service many scenarios. That
Yes.
if that tent helps you for 30 risks, well, get the
Yeah.
tent, but
And
don't really care, what the chances are in some way. Yeah.
Yeah, you really don't care, which is not a nice saying in risk world, because you have to care and think about. What you also introduced, Rinske, here is that we are going to look at the impact.
Mm-hmm.
So we have the stuff available till the impact is there, and then we can mitigate or the results. And there, I talked about it last time, the fragile side of business continuity, bouncing back, being able to continue what you've done. But this way of looking at the future with the possible futures also allows you to bounce forward and say, hey, if that happens, I change my business model or I change my activities. If I talk networks, we are going to rely more heavily on our suppliers, which is a big change in business modeling, right? So,
Exactly.
well, there's a compliment in the chat, so that's a good moment to end this part and go on to the next if there's no other questions. Thank you, Krishni.
Thanks, Krishna.
Yeah.
I just wanted to mention something else, like with the cones, and to say, what kind of futures are there? To link it straight back to the summer course. So we had a session for the first time in last summer course where a fantastic presenter from Rabobank actually did future thinking with us, and he broke down with us a number of barriers that were about future thinking that is based on past assumptions. He broke that down because that's where your limitations are in thinking all the different colors and directions of these futures, because you otherwise you still refer back to what you've seen before. And this was super interesting, as a bit of a mind shift for organizations. So yeah, that session is coming again this year, and so yeah, we look forward to it.
Rinske, may I add one more? Because in that session there was also a possible future directing to the left, I remember. So we had three
exactly
to the right and one to the left.
Yeah.
And there the conclusion of that session and the people involved was that you can't handle that. You can't go to the right and to the left at the same time. And the end result was to sell off the particular activity of that company that was in the possible future to the left in that particular case, which then as a company as a whole increased the resilience for the future because you didn't have that left-sided risk or left projected risk activity in your organization anymore. Right. So we do that kind of stuff in the summer course. Yeah.
And we will move on to the next topic. But what is extremely important as well is when you brainstorm with teams internally about the craziest, what we call them black swan, oh, this will never happen type scenarios. I did one of those sessions right here in that Pacific island that I mentioned earlier, where I'm based on for a project. And people found it really fun to do. They were like, really come up with crazy scenarios, and they encouraged it. And what they then had to do is find provisions and response mechanisms to deal with those crazy scenarios. And out of those, we actually could use at least 10, 20, 30%, So you have to sometimes get people really outside that the past way of thinking and use that creativity there. So which is one of the core principles of the summer course, is really not doing it just ISO standards, textbook kind of black text on white paper style. We really get people hands-on, in group work, in teamwork, and that really helps always.
Yeah. Yeah, we got a
let's
chat
move on
from
to one area of risk.
Go ahead, Rinske.
Yeah. You got a
Go
chat
ahead.
from Stephen you were mentioning?
Yeah, but I wanted to say that we will deal with it in the Q&A meeting next time. It's about early signals, early warnings.
Yeah,
That's a clear question, and there is a clear answer to it. We will deal with it next time.
Yeah, great. Look, this next slide is trying to talk about AI risk. So I get involved quite a lot in my consulting work on enterprise risk management with boards and executives on determining what questions do senior leadership need to ask about AI risk. The technical questions we're not covering in the summer course. We're not going into, oh, what is the best tool? Is it DeepSeek? Is it ChatGPT? All that kind of stuff. We're not doing any of that. But we will look at, okay, what are the key opportunities and threats around AI? And one of the key principles that everybody by now, of course, knows is humans are, AI is good at repetitive work and administrative tasks and so on, and automation, whereas humans are the ones that need to add what is true. You know, they're better at the truth and ethics and so on. So that's one of the principles. You wanted to add something about agentic AI as well in this context, Sicco?
No, sorry, not now. No.
Not now? Okay, later on. So one example, and this is some of my colleagues from Deloitte or people I've worked with in the past, they shared this picture with me, and I thought this is such a great one. This is about the risk management process itself. So you could do the same sort of thing for an admin team. You could do the same for an HR department. You could do the same for a supply chain, logistics department, whatever. But this one is actually done for the risk management process itself. And you can see a little slider in there, and the bottom right shows what it means. So the slider means if there's a lot of gray in it, that means there needs to be a lot of human involvement. And if there's a lot of blue in it, there's a lot of AI tech opportunity to involve more of that or to automate things. And you can see in various stages of that risk management process that actually, well, there's, for example, more or less role of humans that needs to be there. And you can see on some of those activities on the left, like sensing what kind of risk events are happening, early warning systems, just like that question from that participant right now, looking at, can we censor, certain things, certain imminent risks or threats, whether it's related to weather events or protests or whatever, like, can we sense any of that? And then so that you can automate heavily. But then there's other stages, for example, assessing the risk and relative importance of those risks and the contextual kind of side where there's a little bit more impact validation, for example, where there's a lot more human involvement. And then you see strategy formulation, cross-functional mitigation, and risk minimization. That sits more on the human impact side. So this is just an example of some of the risk activities that we see now happening with more tools. There are tools out there that literally that you can subscribe to that monitor if you have a factory in a certain part of whatever, Timbuktu, what are the risks or the physical threats, the weather related events, any of those things that can happen to that particular location. And so you don't have to have actual intelligence yourself anymore for that. You can actually get that all automated. So that's where the opportunities are. And the costs of those things are also lowering dramatically compared to the past. Another aspect of AI risk management, things can, of course, go wrong. I mean, AI has hallucinations, as we call them. It has bias, it has output errors, and they can impact on compliance or quality. And you can see here one of the famous court cases where ChatGPT or an AI tool was, in this case, ChatGPT was used to get evidence, and it was all wrong, basically, or there was a lot of faults in it. And it became a huge issue where the client actually lost the case for that, due to that. So that's where things dramatically go wrong. We see here some examples around risks of AI in context of deep fakes or certain things that people do even for fun or with intentional kind of purpose. The one on the right, for example, where you can see completely wrong kind of images of what's happening in a hurricane. On the left, you see people traveling to a location that is in a beautiful brochure that was completely AI generated, doesn't exist at all. So these people actually landed apparently in that location, in this case in Tasmania. And so that's where AI goes wrong in terms of, is it true or not? And then you've got the flip side now where it is, and we all know the example that's in the news on a daily basis at the moment, but where it is like, oh, that's a deep fake video. That's not true. Whereas it might actually be completely true. So now we've kind of gone full circle with all of this. And knowing what is true is, like I said, you need humans for it, but even then it gets hard. The EU Act on artificial intelligence is another, I would almost call it a threat. It's also an opportunity for some, but I would say it's a major threat for a lot of organizations to prove compliance with this, even if they are compliant. It is actually the whole burden, the administrative burden of trying to prove that you are compliant is a risk area. And I see this with many organizations that I work with. And a huge one is, do you have skilled staff in your organization who actually are ahead of the game when it comes to AI? And that's a huge area of risk in my view, probably even the biggest one, because if you don't even know what you're trying to measure or what risks there are, if you don't have the skilled staff in-house to attract them, to keep them trained, and to keep them inspired to stay with you, or a good partnership, like Sicco always advocates as well, like some network thinking around this. Who are the partners that you can involve in your business that are the experts on AI, and how to optimally workshop or think tank that with other organizations. I've seen that successfully done as well in some, even between competitors, where they actually acknowledged as an industry and say, we don't know anything about this or not enough, and how can we pull together and do it better as a sector. So there are some opportunities around the threats as well. Sorry, let me cover a few more of these AI risks. So if we're looking at third-party risks, transparency issues around vendors, etc., become a problem, especially when it's AI models that are overseas. We talked about the ChatGPT, etc. Often they're managed by parties that we don't even know. Data sovereignty around it, like foreign-run cloud infrastructure that some of these tools reside on. Confidential data exposure is another area. What are your staff uploading? Other cybersecurity threats like supercharged attacks, supercharged by AI, automated hacking, etc. The whole world, some of you may come from the IT world like I do. IT management was my first area of work and consultancy and so on. You had this wonderful flow chart of, okay, first we have the need of a customer, and then we say, well, let's investigate some software tools. And then we have a development activity, whether it's in-house or outsourced. And then we're going to do some UAT, some user testing. And then we're going to go into production. And then we're going to, do some monitoring. It's like that whole cycle has been completely turned upside down, especially with the tools that we get presented on our desktop for AI, and where we don't even know what it is. Like, for example, Windows. If you're a Windows user, you get Copilot. You haven't even asked for it. The managers in your team, in your organization, have to decide: can we use this? What can we upload? Do we use it internally only, or is it going to be a global, like an external platform? What are the threats around it? The whole making sense of all of this is one of the risks. Yeah, so that's a key area. Developments are going so fast that even piloting some of those things is an illusion, I think. Competitors are ahead of you already. Other parties are using it. AI is often assessed only at task level, not strategic level. You're missing out on many opportunities and not understanding how to use AI in one area, and what risks it can cause in other areas. So, for example, if you introduce AI in some of your manufacturing stages and become heavily reliant on that, it can affect other areas in your business, but also AI can go down. And that's why we always talk about business continuity plans and resilience and the futures, the possible futures. What if it goes down? Do you still have your manual workarounds in place? And that's what BCP in my world is all about as well. Back to pen and paper almost. And we often have forgotten all of those because, the cloud will never go down, and the players in there, they're so well prepared. Well, CrowdStrike was one example where that was not the case. So yeah, I think that's covering a lot of AI risks and also opportunities, some threats and opportunities, I should say. And the human side, just like Sicco was talking about earlier, that whole staff morale, fear about, do I still have a job in a year's time because of AI? That whole side of things that comes in as well, and many organizations are dealing with that. But as Karim Lakhani said, of course, the humans with AI skills will replace humans without AI. So there's also some opportunities there. So that's a bit of a broader picture on AI risk. Is there anything you'd like to add on that topic, Sicco, or would you like to move to the next one?
Well, glider to the next message will be probably agentic AI, because everything that you told is true as we as humans use AI, but as soon as agentic comes in, we get multiple representations of ourselves in the AI environment being answered by other agents, formerly known as customers or suppliers or people, at least, right? So your example of well, the wrong information used in court. Imagine that the defending attorney also was an AI machine, and they started to get off in the wrong direction, so to say, and there you are, well, elevating the risks related to it, and all the remarks that are there, especially the remarks on can you define AI risks? And my preferred answer there is no, I don't, and I don't want to, because AI will think about the risk itself in the next stage by another agent who is react, and so on and so on. So I think it's more the process of how do we react. Also the question of Tim, how do we inform leaders in the current situation about AI? I would like to add there, how do we train agents to do the same and to react to AI risks? And there, somewhere there, I don't know the answers anymore, because we start to learn how it works, and the developments go at an increasing speed. Okay, let's go on to the next, because that one is the Alliance data breach already, or almost a year ago. And in the Netherlands, we very recently had the Odido breach. So Odido is the 5G connection supplier, telephone, internet, and so on. And they had let's say, it's dangerous, but similar kind of breach as Alliance had. So can you click Rinske? Okay, what you see, this is the network or the organization of Alliance, and they have all kinds of internal risks and internal measures, and resilience and business continuity plan. And here you see that they also are part of a large external network, each consisting in this particular example on 4 other networks. And it happened that the CRM, the customer relationship, so the commercial software supplier, they had the breach, and the shiny hunter hackers, they were able to come into the internal Alliance network through one of the networks of their suppliers. And the same happened in Odido. And it was shiny hunters as well, so there might be an expertise in doing that in this hackers organization. So what we advocate is that what happens if we stop talking about third-party risks, because what is a third party in the current networks? So if you click another time, what you see here, what we try to imagine is that the external environment in cloud related digitized environments, certainly like 5G supply of Odido and Alliance here. The suppliers, partners in the network, are sort of internal, and their risks are internal, which is difficult to grasp, because if you say, well, my strategy, there's the question on strategic impact and big uncertainty. So if I prepare my organization, how do I, and have a strategic goal and possible futures in there, And how do I then prepare for my suppliers' possible future? Still with me? And as long as they are integrated in my system, I don't have to ask them how they see their futures because they are part of my future. Very difficult. And you don't see management or risk literature yet, or I don't know that at least, where we think that way. So it's the insider threat, and there's a lot of insider threat examples and guest speakers in the summer course as well. They really talk, how do I deal with my employees and their way of working with the systems. And we would like to add the notion that you should ask the same questions to your suppliers' employees. And how do they do that? How do I deal with former employees still having their facilities to go into my system? What happens if my former employee works for my supplier and keeps the systems open, or cannot, etc., etc. So we think that ecosystem thinking really is the answer here to say, hey, I have to deal with especially the core suppliers and know their potential impact. What is new to the block in this discussion is that we talk about suppliers in the network and how do we deal with it, but also look at customers, because I'm the supplier of my customer. So there the same happens. So if you are in the web sales business and your customers have their possibility to go into your system and do their stuff, they might cause insider threat as well, although they are not part of your organization. Well, that's for me the big lesson learned from the Alliance Live and now from Odido. Yeah, I can have physical examples as well. Take an airport, and if there is no kerosene available anymore, an airport can blame the supplier of kerosene. But yeah, the whole thing goes down, right? Or we had the same with the blackout of electricity. And if I have my backups for electricity in place, but I'm the only one in the city, which happened in New York City, what's the use of having my own backups and being available to run as I'm integrated in a whole network that's down, right? So that's the lesson. We would like to extend the thinking on risk management, not so much in my own silo, but in the network as well, and have a real talk and integrated discussion with suppliers and customers on it.
Yeah, and in the summer course, Sicco, we remember last year we did an exercise on the digital supply chain as opposed to the more visible and I wouldn't say predictable, but you know there's more old information on the physical supply chains because we've dealt with them for a long time, whereas the digital supply chain, I mean, the average portal online, whether it's Amazon or whatever, has something like 250 digital suppliers behind it. So having that visible is even more interesting.
Yeah,
more
imagine
exciting.
that, imagine that your supplier is Google based, we are Microsoft based, and the customer is Amazon based. There you are.
Yeah.
Each having their own risk management stuff in place. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
True.
So yeah, when we talk about Microsoft and that, we talk in the summer course a bit about some of the actual case studies. Also in our seminar in September, in last year September or the year before, I mean, we covered the CrowdStrike disaster and talked also again about the assumption that something technical has failed. Well, actually, a lot of it is about people related mistakes. So security incidents. Disengagement of staff, making mistakes, not following protocols, all of those types of risks. I mean, how do you cover for them? Because humans cannot be fully predicted. And once again, cover yourself for the outcomes, for the impacts, rather than thinking too much about how you can prevent. Another example that we cover in there as well, and that we've covered in the discussions and case studies around it, were issues around the other kind of case studies. So not just the Microsoft related ones and CrowdStrike, but you can see all sorts of alternatives and the best defense sort of mechanisms. But in the meantime, you can see here half the UK businesses look to increase cyber cover. Now, what does that tell you? I mean, that is impact reduction. I get that, but it is not actually the impact. Well, how do you ensure your reputation? That's one question. You can have cyber insurance and paying for costs, but your reputation can still be affected dramatically, and no insurance can cover you for that. This case study is an interesting one. This is the Spain Portugal power outage. Even just finding the root cause is a huge challenge, and it was a huge challenge at the time. And that actually then causes real challenges in finding preventative controls. If you don't know the root cause of an incident, and if that's covered up, for example, if nobody is supposed to know what the real cause was because it creates panic or whatever, and with what goes on in terms of the news at the moment, it's more about what people believe rather than what's the truth. Some people will summarize it, the situation like that. How do you then find more preventative controls? So once again, we advocate again for these types of situations more the consequence thinking and pulling together as a supply chain or as a number of entities to cover for that, rather than just thinking, hey, have I got my generators, like what Sicco is saying? If you're the only one left standing, what does that do? Number 5 is all about
Okay,
ESG.
Rinske.
Yes.
Tim
Yes.
said there's no such thing as a single root cause.
Well, there you go. And
There
that's
you go.
and knock-on
So,
effects, exactly.
exactly.
And that's an even bigger challenge to foresee that, or to even see the relation between them.
Exactly.
What I wanted to add there is how many risk registers have you seen where you see 153 line items in a risk register? And because it's so mind-boggling and so challenging, the idea of looking at, hey, what happens if this risk happens on the same day of that? What's the likelihood? What's the impact rating? What are the controls? Nobody does that because it seems so mind-boggling. And in the summer course, we do that mind mapping on key risks and how they interact and how to actually find the low-hanging fruit, the quick wins on then treating those risks instead of trying to treat all 153 of them. So yeah, thanks for that comment. That's excellent.
Yeah. And now Tim adds the bow tie nowadays, which is the one slide that we left out for today because it's an important part of the super
Yeah, we use
so
bow
there you
tie
are.
in our and the more diagram we use in context of that, which is all about the positive risks, the opportunities.
Yeah.
So
And I would like to add,
good.
you said it a bit in between, but certainly when risks happen, so to say, looking at the impact is for me much more interesting, and how to overcome the impact or prevent the impact from happening next time. You said it a little bit on the heat map already, impact orientation versus likelihood orientation. And yes, lawyers do want to know the root cause because there's the money to solve all the problems, right? So yeah, very good remarks on these points. Okay, there we are, the G. And in ESG, I would like to, you can put the slide in, Rinske. Yeah, leave, okay.
Let me pause here.
Yeah. I would like to stress on ESG this time, the governance part, also some remarks earlier on the network. Am I responsible for my suppliers? And can I, let's say, link the responsibility towards my customers? Can I link that to my suppliers? And there was also a remark on contracts, also from Tim. We still use contracts to write down the relationship between suppliers and ourselves, which is kind of blocking. And that's the birds talking all the time. What we do in contract is say to the supplier, this is what I need, this is what I want. And I always say, try this at home. And there, your effect on your relationship will be quite big. if you do that all the time. So telling somebody what to do is not the answer to risks. That's this picture here. Please, can you put in the rest as well? So
Oh,
no, yeah.
sorry.
So here you see, let's say, the combination of earlier slides. You see the network again, and the notion that in this case, Alliance is part of the whole network and is dependent on the risk mitigation, or at least the risk management plans and the business continuity plans of suppliers and customers in that possible future thinking. And here we put in the black swans, or as Kees van der Vleuten earlier said, the gray rhinos, which we call looming black swans. So what happens here, if you know that these four possible futures are there, it immediately indicates that the black swans outside these cones and outside the possible futures, or the gray rhinos in there, you deliberately leave them, which is kind of stupid for an engineer, because if I know there's something happening, there's a rhino, either white or gray, walking there, why would I leave them? Well, the simple answer is because it's not in my projected future where I want to be in my organization, and the risks that I want to, well, in the business continuity of my particular organization, I foresee in the future. And the idea here is that that was also one of the chats. You can't react to all the risks. That's also a lesson from the VUCA world, obviously. You can have, you said you had a list of 150 potential risks, right? A few minutes ago. Yeah, what's the use of having a list of 150? You can't handle it. So if you have that and you have your mitigation measures oriented at 150 risk, I would argue that they all are gray rhinos, because you can't have enough time devoted to it to deal with. So here again, also governance is for me not so much looking at your supply chain or looking at your network, looking at your own organization. I have to govern everything that is happening, and I have to be aware that I can handle that. But yeah, one of the questions here is how about risk appetite or use relevance? The idea of VUCA world is that I can't really decide on what's relevant, because if the future is moving and it's volatile and things, what is relevant for me? And still, I can't do everything. So you have to make this choice-making process in place. So I like risk appetite in a sense that I am willing to accept that in 2 years' time, something will happen, but that's not now. So I don't prepare for that because it's longer away, and I see, and I can move and be agile in there. I'll see what happens and then react later on. Because these possible futures, they will move to the future as well.
And with the rate of change, what happens, in the world around us, all of these things like risk assessments, risk matrices, risk registers, they all typically have this sort of annual kind of refresh rate. I mean, what Sicco and I always advocated is keep brainstorming about those potential cones and where they might be heading, and do that far more frequently, and make it a fun exercise and make it a hands-on activity to do black swan development, within your organization. White rhinos, black rhinos, whatever you want to add to the picture, but make that something that's more an ongoing activity, and for people to think what ifs when they do certain things in their day-to-day work, and not just assume it all is going to work when they press the button on the computer or when they turn up the coffee machine, but what if not? Hey, can I deal with that impact? That kind of thinking.
Yeah. There's a question from Dennis, last, if I may. Do we have a bit time? Yeah. That is a good question, and it's the question is how should we include black swans? And the obvious answer, yeah, is you can't, because as soon as you include the black swan, it's not black anymore. Or the gray Reno, you see it as soon as you see it, you deal with it. So that's the funny thing of black swans, and that's why we say we can deliberately leave them out if we see it, and we don't treat it as a risk that is needed to be treated, and that's the looming black swan. And to step a bit into the environmental, what's happening now to the Paris Agreement and everything in the industrial world, where we say, well, also the omnibus stuff in Europe, we deliberately choose to postpone all the environmental measures, and we know they will bounce back right later. So we create our future black swan here, which is fine, because yeah, if we can't deal with it now, but so I would say if I choose to make a black swan looming, have it back on the table next year or the year later or the year later, and do that process all the time. And then you can shift from one to the other. Okay, sorry, I was interrupting you. We can go on now to the tile here. The one
No,
line.
I think it sums up what you just said also, Sicco, because it's not about thinking, oh, the bad stuff, how can we reduce the chance of that? And this is where the eternal discussion happens between security people, for example, and business people, or, you know, more commercial people in an organization. Security people, as soon as they know there's even a minuscule chance of something happening, like some crazy guy turning up with a gun at 3 o'clock in the morning within, you know, at that door of the building, even if the chance is almost zero, they will want to treat that risk. And what we're suggesting is, okay, don't even think about what the causes are, deal with the impact, acknowledge that, make that the future cones, the future thinking, and make that an actual real benefit to your business to be that prepared. Because even if a small thing happens, you can still use that preparedness for your little hiccups. You know, it's not like a waste of time to make those response plans. So it really gives you that benefit, I think.
Yeah.
Anything you'd like to add, Sicco, for that one, or?
Yeah, perhaps two things. An example of black swans is now running in the chat, and the two planes flying into the World Trade Center is an example. Nobody thought that could happen. In hindsight, probably people do. And there is a question in the Q&A on the FMEA risk analysis: is severity times occurrence time detection is your priority number. And what we would like to add to the discussion, at least, is can we add the impact there, the potential impact, as a reason to react or a reason to mitigate risks, and not so much the occurrence or the detection, because if it is very small to be detected, but the impact is so huge, I should detect it and do all the measurements towards the detection. So we're really thinking on, can we do something in that particular direction of impact and choice making around impact.
We'll run through these final slides and talk about the summer course a little bit. We're covering quite a lot of questions here interactively as well, so that's great. Around the standards that we cover also in summer course, and some topics around governance and regulation. DORA is a clear new kind of requirement since a year and a bit ago. That you know, the EU parties who are in the finance sector especially, that they have to comply with. So we will cover. We have a speaker in summer course about DORA. My slant on DORA is the bigger, even more so than with AI risk, with ICT continuity and ICT third-party risk. You actually have a bigger risk of the burden of compliance affecting your profits, your day-to-day outcomes, and having enough full-time employees to actually do all this compliance stuff, filling in the 80-page kind of checklist to be a supplier of, you know, a finance institution in the EU. Proving it is a much bigger threat actually than having these provisions in place, which I see most organizations have a lot of these provisions, but to prove it on an ongoing basis is the real threat. With ISO standards, the same thing. If you interpret them wrong, And if you do them all in isolation and all these frameworks, information security, business continuity, and so on, if you do them all in isolation, you're going to waste a lot of time and money, and especially you're going to make a lot of enemies around you in the business units who have to be participating in all these workshops and things. So if you have already a starting point, or if you find the commonality between the clauses and the controls in these standards, you can actually really make that whole effort much more concise and less time consuming if you implement some of these frameworks in parallel. I've done quite a lot of those workshops for BCM, for information security and risk management in conjunction. One of the key questions with all of these frameworks is, what are your crown jewels as an organization? What are the really important things you need to protect, your processes, your data? So you can really get some efficiency gains in doing them in parallel. If you already have something like quality management, that gets you a head start in that context as well. So we touched on quite a lot of modules, I think. The main new kind of structure that we have is in that in the division between different topics. The third module has that AI risk management added, and the fourth one is really just zooming into supply chain continuity and third-party risk. We had that more integrated before in other topics, but we separated it this time. So have a look at it again. If you've already done a summer course, you can maybe see if that module 4 is a new one that you would like to go and come and participate, or of course the whole summer course program, which is always different every year to some degree. Sicco?
Yeah, so thanks for being here, all of you. Thanks for all the lively discussion and reactions. We recorded it, so we will summarize them and make up. No, not make up. We know all the answers, of course. No, we will deal with it in the next webinar on the 19th and invite you all to join us. If you have questions or you want deeper discussion, please email us. There's obviously also possibility to reach out for us outside this chat or the Q&A. Thanks for
and we will also save the questions that didn't get answered today as well. We'll bring them in 2 weeks' time. Yeah,
yes,
great. So that's the information about that. I think there's a little bit of information Angelique may need to share, or Daniel. Are you guys there, or do you need to highlight any information here?
I'm here. So yeah, thank you, Rinske and Sicco, for shedding some light on these topics. As said, we will have a follow-up webinar for more Q&A. So yeah, please join us. We will email all the information to you. It will be the same Zoom link, but it will be sent to you by email as well again. We will also share the recording, so if you were not able to join the whole session, then you can look at it at another time. Yeah, I think that's for now. Thank you again, and yeah, we look forward